Are there any similarities between the two TV shows, House of the Dragon and The Rings of Power? Should there be any reason for them to compete? If you want to know more about them, watch this video until the end. Today's video will discuss all that George R.R. Martin and Andy Serkis have to say about Rings of Power and its complicated relationship to House of the Dragon. First off, what does George R.R. Martin have to say about Rings of Power? It's not surprising that online discussion forums have become overrun with comparisons between House of the Dragon and The Rings of Power, given that they are both currently airing simultaneously. Yet, George R.R. Martin queried the necessity of pitting them against one another, saying that any antagonism mainly exists in the media, instead of between them. However, Martin stated that he expected competition between the two in an exclusive interview with The Independent back in May. Still, he added that fans of the genre, of which he is one, should happily accept the situation. Martin has previously stated that he sincerely hopes Rings of Power is successful. He even goes as far as to suggest that he would like to see more diverse fantasy television shows. Martin asserts that fantasy enthusiasts have never had it so good. In fact, he believes that the enormous popularity of Game of Thrones will pave the way for much more fictional content to be made available on TV or streaming services rather than just one at a time. So, could George be correct? It's true that before Game of Thrones, we might have yet to predict the simultaneous release of two high-profile series set in beloved fantasy settings and their success. And let's be truthful, did anyone watch the Game of Thrones premiere and comment, "This brings back memories of Lord of the Rings"? No, they are very distinct tales presented in particular fashions. George R.R. Martin may have a good idea, so why do we need to compare the two and look for parallels? We'd be better off if we just appreciated each show for what it was and concentrated on what it did well. Naturally, not everyone will enjoy both franchises due to their differences, and it's alright, there is no requirement for a contest. However, it's reasonable to assume that Martin does harbor a slight sense of rivalry towards the Rings of Power, which he claims is primarily motivated by media attention. If they take home 6 Emmys, which I hope they do, I'm hoping we get 7. There you have it then. Fictional fan George R.R. Martin is okay with several shows airing at once. But of course, timetabling conflicts are no longer a concern for modern viewers. Everybody can watch all the shows they want at the time that works best for them. Their only rivalry is over who has won the most Emmys. But are there any similarities between House of the Dragon and Rings of Power? On October 23, 2022, the first season of HBO's House of the Dragon ended. A second season has already been ordered. On October 14, 2022, The Lord of the Rings of Power on Prime Video ended after its first season, leaving fans with a long wait for the next installment. Comparisons were inevitable given that The Rings of Power and House of the Dragon both made their debuts about the same time and featured medieval settings, magic, and connections to longer works, The Lord of the Rings and Game of Thrones, respectively. Indeed, there are more than passing comparisons between the two shows. Digging a little deeper reveals how similar both universes are. So, what are some of these similarities? Up next, our first similarity is that both shows are based on well-known book series. The Rings of Power finale contained a lot of hints and foretelling that hinted at forthcoming events. Since The Lord of the Rings is the source of the show, fans who are acquainted with it will likely be aware of all of these. The same is true of House of the Dragon, a retelling of A Song of Ice and Fire between George R.R. Martin. Some other similarity between them is that they only partly draw their inspiration from the writings. House of the Dragon used material from Fire and Blood prequel to A Song of Ice and Fire, whereas The Rings of Power used material from The Lord of the Rings addendum. To carve out original content, both shows have gotten creative. Another similarity is that there is a middle-aged setting in both shows. With their sophisticated costume designs, secular music, and demeanor, both shows have a visual style that may cause viewers to think of the Middle Ages, due to the demonstration and style. Watching any episode from either series looks similar to watching the others. Most of the voices have British accents and originate from regions near the English Isles. Many protagonists also have lengthy, straight hair to match their cloaked attire. In this way, both House of the Dragon and The Rings of Power use these Middle Ages feel to convey that the stories take place in the past. And they both have similarities in their opening sequel. Massive theme songs that build anticipation can be heard in the intros for House of the Dragon and The Rings of Power. The two introductions play out widely, and the openings depend heavily on visuals to convey to audiences the series motif. The Rings of Power's drawings focus on the titular rings that everyone is contending for, while House of the Dragon uses a trail of blood leading into the series emblem to symbolize the character's bloody struggle for dominance. Coming right up, what other similarities are there? Well, both movies are prequels. Even though the conclusion to The Rings of Power left many unanswered questions, the outcome is inevitable. This is because the series is a prequel to The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, both of which feature Galadriel Galadriel in the previous incarnation. In the same way, House of the Dragon takes place before Game of Thrones, with the earlier series influencing how the Targaryens are portrayed in the latter. The fact that they are prequels is significant, because for fans to comprehend what's happening, they must be aware of what occurred in the original show and movies. A fifth similarity is the theme of deception run in both series, before revealing that the stranger was just not Sauron as many had assumed. Several hints to his identity in the Rings of Power, Galadriel backstabbed by the villain who tricked her with his companionship and started the Three Rings creation, as the characters compete in a civil war to control House Targaryen. Deception is another overarching theme in House of the Dragon. Both shows' heroes, villains, and even protagonists primarily employ betrayal and backbiting to further their objectives. On top of this, both series have scenes of massive battles. Even though there are fewer battle scenes in House of the Dragon than some might have preferred, there are still plenty of them. Because of the primary conflict, several battles in the Rings of Power are much larger than those in House of the Dragon. The chaos during these battles is emphasized in House of the Dragon and the Rings of Power, which also highlight the hero's role in determining the outcome. The show's shared medieval aesthetic is full of battle scenes. And our last similarity, both narratives are set in fantastical settings. Fantasy worlds are simple to categorize and include places with dragons, elves, and mystical trees, which includes both the Rings of Power and House of the Dragon. However, the erstwhile series focuses a lot more on this, to the point where protagonists have different abilities. A strong emphasis on the dragons at hand makes it clear that fantasy is the franchise's primary genre, even though House of the Dragon does not go all in on this aspect like the Rings of Power does. The magical concept is used in both shows to create the setting for the narrative.
These roots block our path.
Then rip them out. Rip the whole stinking tree down!
Finally, Andy Serkis shares his review of The Rings of Power. The new TV show The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, has gained support from many people connected to the first three of the Lord of the Rings movies, including Andy Serkis, who played Gollum in the sequence. Serkis may not have explicitly expressed his backing for the company's particular plot or overall goal, but his only remarks were ones of reassurance for bringing the vast worlds of Middle-earth to life on screen. The actor commended the series' overall aesthetic and the mood it handles to capture, notwithstanding being a TV show. Moreover, he also added that some of the performances had impressed him. Serkis told Jake's Takes, "It's masterfully made, and there are some genuinely excellent performances. I believe it's a charming rendition. Furthermore, spending time with those protagonists is incredibly exciting, and I know that Lord of the Rings fans are enthralled by it." Serkis has a variety of roles in the Lord of the Rings film series, but he doesn't appear to have a direct role in the new sequence, so it sounds like he can relax and enjoy it. How do you feel about the actor's responses? Comment below and let us know. I hope you enjoyed the video and got some information out of it. Remember to click that like button, subscribe, and comment. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.